What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I'm making a quick video. Look, we are a couple days out from the draft, literally 2 days out from the draft. It is Tuesday right now. The draft starts on Thursday. It goes Thursday, Friday, Saturday of this week. And so, look, it's almost here. We don't have much longer to wait or speculate on what it is that the Dolphins are going to do. I don't know if this is going to be my last video between now and the draft. Obviously, I'm going to be doing a live stream for the draft, and it looks like things are going to be working out in such a fashion that I will be able to do my full live stream on Thursday as normal and as previously planned. I mentioned to you guys that there may have been a small scheduling conflict with something else that I had to do. It looks like that is going to be sorted out, so make sure that you join me for the live stream. It's going to be exciting, and we're going to find out what the Dolphins do. You know, all the speculation behind us. But there is an article that I want to read. Like I said, I don't know if this will be my last video between now and then. There may be something that piques my interest that I want to talk about. But I think this is fitting, certainly a couple days before the draft to discuss. And if it is my last video between now and then it's certainly absolutely fitting. And I think you will understand why in just a moment. So let's get right to it. This article is 4 teams that can't afford to blow it in the 2020 NFL draft. So there are 4 teams in here. I'm only going to read the portion that's, you know, relevant to the Dolphins because they are obviously on this list, and it's absolutely correct. Now, I mean, I think that it was massively important for them to get last year's draft correct, considering it was the first one under, you know, Brian Flores, Marvin Allen, Reggie McKenzie, Chris Greer, and Stephen Ross together. Whereas, just real quick as a side note, you know, a lot of the things that happened, like the big name free agent signings and a lot of the players that they got and stuff like that were pre-Gase, right? So, in the Jets, right? So I know that's a little bit off topic, but everybody wants to like blame Gase for last year, even though he managed to bring a team with a lot of turmoil to 7 wins, none of which was created by him, none of the turmoil, but he still managed to get them 7 wins. Whereas the turmoil with the Dolphins last season was very much due to, you know, the actions of Brian Flores. Of course, also the actions of Chris Greer, Marvin Allen, Reggie McKenzie, and by the directive of Stephen Ross. They were directed to tank, right? But he had a part to play in that, and they only managed to squeak out 5 wins as opposed to 7. Anyway, the context is vastly different, but Gase is getting blamed for, you know, things that he had no say over, no control over whatsoever, things that happened prior to him even arriving there as the new head coach hire. Yet, Brian Flores does not get blame or credit or whatever for the things that he absolutely did, things that he admit to doing. He admit to having a hand in every single transaction that the Dolphins have made, yet, you know, the vast majority of people want to blame the front office only, as in Reggie McKenzie, Chris Greer, and Marvin Allen. They want to blame those guys for the teardown of the roster, but not Brian Flores, even though he admit to having a hand in every single one of those transactions. Okay, I mean, it just, whatever, dude. Anyway, so let's get into this article, though. So the 4 teams, but it's absolutely true. So the point of all that is I would argue that last year's draft was massively important. They didn't do very well at it, right? But nobody's, you know, saying that. You know, I mean, their player evaluation has been pretty garbage this entire time. Overall, there's like maybe a handful of guys, right? And then, you know, obviously there are differing opinions on how they handled the offseason. I think that they went about it in a way that is proven to not work out, at least for sustained success. Could it potentially help them improve their win total this year? Maybe. I still don't think that it would be enough to get into the playoffs, even if that's the case. And look, I mean, the Vegas odds have them at 6 wins, so that would be an improvement over the win total, but it would still be a trash season. You know, but do those guys, Van Noy, Shaq Lawson, you know, Eric Flowers, do these guys have the potential and the ability to, one, live up to their contracts and then help this Dolphins team have sustained success more than just like an aberration? Well, we'll see. Anyway, so for the Miami Dolphins, everything is built to this moment. Absolutely. Everything that they did last year, the tanking philosophy they implemented, stripping down the roster, building up the draft capital and the cap space so that way they can be big spenders in free agency, make all these flashy moves, right? And then from what I believe they are going to do, so they could also move up in the draft to take the best quarterback, or at least the best quarterback in their mind at that moment, in this draft class, which I think is going to lead them to move up to the number 1 spot to take Burrow. We'll see in a couple days. With only one other winning season since going 11-5 in 2008, a seemingly never-ending quarterback and head coach carousel during that time span, and little momentum gained as of late, the Dolphins have a ton riding on the 2020 draft. Just pause for a half a second right there, which is also takes me back to the Gase reference. So he mentioned in there, we've only had one winning season since 2008, the 11-5 Wildcat season. Okay, what year was that we had a winning season? Let me think about that. Can I remember? Oh right, that's right. That's right. It was the first year that we went to the playoffs since that same 2008 season. What year was that? Oh, well, that was, let's see, 2016, Gase's first year as head coach of the Miami Dolphins, after taking a perpetually mediocre team and vaulting them to the playoffs in his first season as a head coach. And then subsequently, a couple years later, gets fired for things that have absolutely nothing to do with him. Things he had no control over whatsoever, and simply because he wouldn't, sink to the bowels of football philosophy to accept Stephen Ross's tanking demands. Okay, well, anyway, so let's see. It is absolutely true. They do have a ton riding on this draft. I mean, if they fuck this one up, then I mean, that's pretty much a wrap. They hold 14 selections, including 3 first-round picks and six selections in the top 70. Especially with the pressure being put on this season and the hype being put on it as well. With so many people being like, "Oh, the Dolphins they're gonna have just this massive turnaround in 2020." All right, well, look. Anytime I tweet out about the Dolphins, now one of my hashtags, I put hashtag Miami Dolphins, hashtag Phins up. Obviously, but I've been putting recently hashtag prove it. They need to prove it. They're not going to get the praise until they prove it. When the data suggests, or when not suggests, but shows that they have turned this massive mess that they have created into a success, then they will get the praise. They get it when they earn it. Miami, boasting a treasure trove of assets, also happens to coincide with future Hall of Famer Tom Brady leaving the AFC East. And I'm sure the Dolphins are going to find some wonderful way of screwing it all up. I believe they already have. I think that they were poised and ready to take over the AFC East. And certainly I believe that they were ahead of the Jets and the Bills in that department by having Adam Gase and building what he was building in Miami. And if they were, I virtually guarantee, there's obviously no way that I can physically guarantee or prove it at this point, because he's not the head coach anymore and this didn't materialize. But if he was given one more season, at least just one more season, year 4, I guarantee you they would have been far more competitive, certainly, than we were. But can virtually guarantee they would have been in the playoffs, like all that. We were building a fucking great team. The drafts under Adam Gase and the regime at that time were phenomenal. They had amazing building blocks like Laramie Tunsil and Ryan Tannehill, even though people don't find him as an adequate quarterback or what have you. Minka Fitzpatrick, tons of players. Some of the ones now that are expected to be building blocks like Jerome Baker and Raekwon McMillan, guys that were taken, Mike Gesicki, guys that were taken by Adam Gase, or Devontae Parker, who finally broke out in year 5, but was able to get to that point because of how Adam Gase's regime helped him get, settled and right with his sleeping habits, his practice habits, all those things, right? Anyway, the Dolphins got here by selling away building blocks in defensive back Minka Fitzpatrick and offensive tackle Laramie Tunsil, as he notes in this article. Will it all be worth it? Well, that again is what they have to prove. Much of the team's draft outcome hinges on whether the Dolphins elect to package some of the first round selections, numbers 5, 18, 26, and move up even higher for Tua Tagovailoa or Justin Herbert, assuming Cincinnati indeed makes Joe Burrow the first pick. So real quick, pause there for a half second. Because what I believe is that they are actually going to trade up to the number 1 pick with the Bengals. I think they're going to package away a massive deal to sell them on it, and which I believe is most likely going to include all three first round picks from this year, potentially a second round from this year or maybe next year as well. And then they're going to take Joe Burrow. But I have also revised some of my secondary not predictions, because look, I just go off of what I think is most probable. So I think that it's most probable that the Dolphins will move up to the number 1 spot to take Joe Burrow. But if for some reason they can't get that deal done, previously my thought was the next thing that would happen most logically is that they would trade up to the number 3 spot to get Tua Tagovailoa. But at this point, I believe that everybody thinks that he's not worth a top 5 pick. However, I still do think that the Dolphins are desperate enough to trade up for a quarterback, because if they think that Joe Burrow's going to be off the board at number 1 and Tua's not worth, taking at number 5 or even at 18 or whatever, maybe not even in the first round, or if they think that, another team like the Chargers or Panthers will get him after pick number 5 and take a flyer on him kind of thing, right? Like the Chargers could take him and sit him behind Tyrod Taylor for a year, right? Anyway, if they think something like that's going to happen, or, if they then also think that Herbert will also be off the board because a team could leap us, whatever, then they might think it's worth it and they might go get Herbert. So my secondary most probable option, I believe, is that instead of taking Tua at 3, it would be Herbert that they take at 3 because of his injury concerns. Anyway, let's wrap this up. One could argue there's somehow even more at stake for the Dolphins than the typical team starting over with a top 5 passer, given the investment cost in potentially moving up if they want to guarantee themselves a specific passer. Sacrificing 1 or 2 potential first-round starters at other positions for a misfire on a quarterback now could have devastating long-term results. Absolutely. And that's why I've been saying ahead of time, prior to this, again, I gave the warnings last offseason of what would happen, and the season turned out pretty close to what I expected and predicted, with some minor exceptions. One, thankfully, that I'm glad to be able to have backed off on is that we weren't the worst team in NFL history, and we didn't go 0-16, thankfully. But that's why I tell you guys ahead of time. And they proved me right so far with the offseason. They were going to be big spenders in free agency. They told us they were going to do it. Okay. And, I said they were going to do it. There were people who were like, nah, they're not going to do that. And then they did it, right? They were massive spenders in free agency. They have more guaranteed money than any other team. They put out more in contracts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we'll see if I'm going to be right on Thursday if they trade up. We don't have much longer to go. And if they trade up to the number 1 spot, they'll be the first team on the clock. So there'll absolutely be no waiting to find out what happens. As it stands, Miami has an incredible chance to remake a significant portion of its roster. Real quick, sorry to finish that thought. But if they fuck this up, if they do go up to like the number 1 pick or trade away significant amounts of draft capital and then they misfire, it'll be just what I've been telling you guys the entire time. And why I've been telling you this, because if it comes to fruition, then it will show you that it's not hard to predict these things if you just, you know, follow the fucking breadcrumbs and follow logic and reason. Now, if it doesn't happen, then it certainly will be a shocker, and it certainly will go against what the data suggests at this point. But there is still that probability. They could stay at 5. They could, you know, trade back. The probability of those, though, are quite small compared to the other probability of like them trading up for some, you know, the number 3 spot, the number 1 spot, whatever. Anyway, but this draft will be the key moment in hindsight analysis years down the line when examining the Brian Flores era. There's an opening to finally get the franchise back on track at a good time divisionally speaking, but just as much potential to stumble again and keep current trends going. Given the talent sacrifice to set this up, the latter would be even more devastating than usual. Absolutely, and that's why I said, you know, but I mean, that leaves out guys even like, you know, Cam Wake was gone, Juwan James, and Kiko Alonso, Danny Amendola, right? Tons of guys, Kenny Stills, Ryan Tannehill. They got rid of so much for all of this. And to wrap this up, because this definitely went longer than I wanted to, but look, if this doesn't work out, man, then they're going to set themselves back many years, many years. And look, man, I hope that they prove me wrong. I want them to prove me wrong, but it doesn't, you know, it doesn't add up, man. It doesn't add up. So the proof is in the pudding. They need to prove it. They need to get it right. And I would like for them to start, because again, they've pretty overwhelmingly proven me right to this point. You know, Minka Fitzpatrick, another talent gone. Like, I wish that they would start by proving me right, or proving me wrong, excuse me, in the draft by not moving up. But Thursday night, we'll be here. I'll be doing my live stream. We'll be watching it together. We'll be reacting together. So make sure you join me for that. And that's how I'm going to get up out of here. So I hope you guys enjoy my videos and perspective. It's exciting one way or the other right now, whether you agree with it or not, whether it's a good excitement or a bad excitement. It's exciting for sure. So let's see what happens. If you like my videos and perspective, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.